All right, it's finally been announced. We have a new big box expansion for Marvel Champions, the card game, and they're continuing the X-Men cycle with Next Evolution is what it's called. Now, really quick, before we dive into the box and talk a bit about it, I know some people that watch this channel that don't like to be spoiled at all. So just really quick, very general thoughts. I'm super hyped for it. I think it looks really cool. I think the stuff they're doing is really, really, really neat. And some of it we've seen before, but that'll make more sense later on. And also that it will be released August 18th. I know some people are wondering about that. That's what it says on their sites. That'll be released then. So for those that like to not spoil anything, be hyped. Get excited. It looks really cool. So let's go dive into the actual announcement. And we're going to break this down like quite a bit. All right, here is the main page. I'm not going to read all this or anything like that. It just talks about the X-Force in general. And then it's coming in against what is it, Mr. Sinister and all that fun stuff. Show off a bunch of cards, which is pretty good. We'll be able to look at all these in a second. And it talks right away with the campaign, right? And it begins in New York City with a group of shunned mutants known as the Morlocks are under attack by a vicious group of villains, the Marauders, right? So this is our first villain scenario, and we'll see this in a little bit, but they spoil, right? They tell us all the villains and the heroes in this box, which I think is pretty cool. I think that it's nice that they're doing that. So they talk about each one. First, we have Arclight, a 1/1 villain. A side, B side is what it's looking like. What we're gonna have with the A up there in the top right. When Arclight attacks you or an ally you control, choose. And you can either confuse a character you control, or Arclight gets +2 for that attack. So this is something that we're going to see a bit of. Arclight also has 10 hit points per player. The next villain's gonna be like that too in this cycle, where you get to choose what they do, which I think is actually a pretty cool mechanic. I think it's a neat idea. We've seen variations of this where we could choose certain things that can happen to us, either good or bad. Not good or bad, but bad or other bad. But I think this is the first time we've seen this like truly on a villain card where this is like a normal attack they do, right? I think that's pretty cool. So then we have Chimera, another 1/1 villain with 11 hit points. When Chimera attacks you or an ally you control, spend a science resource, or Chimera gets +2 for this attack, right? So kind of the same exact idea, but you have to spend a resource or they get +2 attack, right? The next one, Grey Crow, is a 1/1 villain with 9 hit points. When Grey Crow attacks you or an ally, you get to choose discard the highest cost card you control, which is rough, or his attack is where X is the printed cost of the highest cost card you control, which like there's some like 4 and 5 cost cards, so that this can get kind of out of hand pretty darn fast, which is pretty interesting, right? It's pretty interesting. I think, yeah, all of them are attacks still, no scheming. So Morlock is a null cost ally, a 1/1/5, victory -1, does not count against your ally limit. Card abilities cannot remove this ally from play. Force interrupt when an ally attacks you, it attacks a Morlock you control instead. So it sounds like several Morlocks while keeping your Morlock allies safe, right? So it sounds like in this scenario, you have to defeat 3 random modules in order to claim victory, all while keeping your Morlock ally safe. So it sounds like there'll be more than one Morlock ally, right? And I don't know, I don't think it says yet how you're going to what's going to work with the Marauders. Like we had the Sinister Six, right, where they kept coming in over and over and over. It looks like that won't be the case. Once you defeat one of them, you're good. You just have to defeat a bunch of them, which will be interesting enough. Be careful though, as each routed Marauder will power up the next one, making cards like Bolster Wrath and Push to the Limit stronger. So Routed is an environment card, just for standard side, so there's going to be an expert side. Let's go. Cards under here are not in play. A force response after the villain is defeated, put it under here. Discard each minion that shares a title with the top villain of the villain deck. That villain is in play. The villain activates against each player in player order. Okay. And then you have cards like Bolstered by Wrath. Exhausted character you control spend X resources of any type, where X is the number of villains under routed. So this could be really difficult later on in games, and they get +1/+1 on it. And then Push to the Limit, right? +1 attack. While there is exactly 1 villain under routed, attached villain gains steady. If there's exactly 2, they gain stalwart, right? So it's like a fun way that while the scenario progresses, that things get like a bit harder. I think that's pretty cool and pretty interesting. All right, so you'll need help with the Morlocks. Hide from the Marauders in order to prevent a mutant massacre, right? So here's Hide. It's a treachery card. Surge. When revealed, give 1 Morlock ally a tough status card, right? Which is okay, cool. And then Mute Massacre. Exhaust a Morlock ally. Shuffle Hide from the encounter discard pile back in the encounter deck, which is nice. If there are 3 villains underrouted, the players win the game. If this stage is complete or there are no Morlock allies in play, the players lose the game. Sad. So we also see Hope's Captor, which we will talk about in a little bit, but they can't. So that's the entire first scenario, right? So we don't know how many allies that there are in play with Morlock allies. You know, if it's 1, 2, or 3, or if it scales per player count. That's yet to be seen. So could be pretty interesting. It seems like a fun, a little bit different of a scenario. It's always a little tough with scenarios where you got to keep certain allies alive, especially when the ally, right, with Morlock, like when an enemy attacks you, it attacks Morlock instead. Like, okay. That can be rough. So we'll see how that goes. All right, so second scenario, on the run also uses the Marauders, but in a completely different way, right? So we're kind of seeing like the same villains being used. Marauders have captured Hope Summers, Cable's adopted daughter, and now they are trying to get away. Unlike the first scenario, only one Marauder serves as the villain at a time, all right? Or at this time. So again, before we had 3, now we only have 1. Your goal is to defeat the one that is Hope's Captor, which we'll see. It's permanent. When the villain attacks you, if a Marauder minion is engaged with you, the villain schemes instead. When the villain would be defeated, reset attached villain's hit points to its printed hit point value instead. Flip this card and reveal, which we don't know what that is yet. Your goal is to defeat the one that is Hope's Captor twice, just like you would for a normal villain, while the other Marauders appear as minions that get in your way. Fun. That's interesting enough. After you defeat the villain once, they begin to grow Desperate, which I think they don't show us that card, right? Oh no, there we go. Yeah, it's Hope's Captor. Sorry, this is the other side of the card, right? It's named the same thing. So it now becomes a +1/+1 villain, and they get 6 extra hit points. Advance the main scheme to stage 2A. This effect cannot be canceled, right? So that's pretty cool. After you defeat the villain once, they begin to grow desperate. Okay, which makes things even tougher. Keep on attacking the villain and stop them from escaping with Hope. So each Marauder minion gains guard and steady. In expert mode, the villain gains steady. Why not? And to increase 1 start with 9 threat total. If the villain is defeated, the players win the game. If the stage is complete, the players lose the game. So not too crazy, but I do like the mechanic of this whole Hope's Captor thing. I think this could be pretty interesting with the Marauders and how they do things. We'll have to see if it's the actual same exact villain cards are used again, or if it's like a different set of villain cards. We don't know that yet. I'm going to guess it's just the same exact cards, because why wouldn't you use the same cards? Which might be a little sad, right? Like you might want them to be a little bit different, but that's not the worst thing in the world, because there are, what is it, 7 of them? Yeah, there's 7 of them. So like that's still like a good amount of them in how the process will work. So I'm not like against it. I don't hate the idea of that, but it would be cool if there were slightly different ones. All right, third scenario, and we get the Juggernaut, which I know a lot of people are excited for. I'm excited for this. I think this will be a lot of fun. I think his mechanic is really cool, so we'll get into that in a second. But has you facing off against the unstoppable Juggernaut, right? And this is his main scheme. When this scheme would be completed, instead do each of the following, which is I think this is cool. I like this a lot. Remove all threat. If Juggernaut exposes in play, flip it and place 1 momentum counter on Juggernaut. Juggernaut attacks each player in player order, even if they're an alter ego. I think this is actually a really cool way to do this. Instead of just like losing on the main scheme, I think it's cool how they're doing this. I like this a lot. So a massive brute with extreme strength, Juggernaut, and he's a 1/2 18 hit point. He gets +1 attack for each momentum counter on him, and you place 1 right in the beginning when he's revealed, right? So right in the beginning, he's going to become a 3 attack, and he also gets a tough status. Really cool. It gets more dangerous with every momentum counter he builds up. Worse, with his signature helmet is equipped. So here's his helmet. It's a permanent attached to Juggernaut. Juggernaut gains Stalwart, and his attacks gain Overkill, right? Which is crazy, but that's awesome. Spend 3 resources of the same type. Remove each momentum counter from Juggernaut and flip over this card, right? Pretty something you're probably going to want to do pretty fast. Is equipped, he becomes immune to stun and confuse and gets Overkill. With all the power he wields, it may feel impossible to slow his villain down, but there is a way. By spending 3 resources of the same type, you can rip Juggernaut's helmet off, removing all momentum counts from him and leaving him exposed. I think this is a cool mechanic how they're doing this, right? They're switching it between having the helmet on and off. So when it's off, Juggernaut takes 1 additional damage from each card with a printed science resource, which is kind of an interesting way of doing this. And after Juggernaut schemes, place 1 momentum counter on Juggernaut and flip this over, right? So you don't want him to scheme at all. So advance is really gonna stink. But it's pretty cool that you could do this. I think this is a really neat mechanic. While he's exposed, Juggernaut takes extra damage from cards with mental resources printed on them, like the newly rescued Hope Summers. Let's go. So Hope is a null cost star with no consequential damage, which is interesting, and 3 life. She's a setup card. The first player controls Hope Summers. Hope Summers does not count against your ally limit, and her base thwart and base attack are equal to the thwart and attack of your hero, right? Which might be really huge later on. We're going to talk a bit about. But I kind of like this idea, this mechanic. I think this is a cool idea. And it's also interesting because her base thwart and attack are equal to whatever the thwart and attack is on your hero. So it's not your base thwart and attack, right? So if you put on like something that gives you +1 threat removal or +1 attack, right, it transfers over to Hope as well, which is kind of cool. I like this idea of what they're doing. Who will assist you for the rest of the campaign? So, okay, good to know. She'll, for the campaign, at least be with us for scenario 3, 4, and 5, most likely, as long as she doesn't wind up as a captive, right? So, Hope Summers cannot ready. When revealed, exhaust Hope Summers. Acceleration icon, 3 threat removal needed. For solo, that's not really too bad, right? That's not going to be that terrible of a thing, but it does stink that, like, you can just randomly lose her. I mean, it's good. It's like thematic. I like it a lot. It's just, it's a rough card, right? All right, so next up we have Sinister Plot. After taking down Juggernaut, it's finally time to square off against the mastermind behind the plot to capture Hope, Mr. Sinister. He was teased the last box, so it makes sense that he would be in this one. 2/1 villain, right, with 14 hit points. After a status card is placed on Mr. Sinister, place 1 threat on the main scheme, which is interesting, right? It's kind of interesting. They're going to be playing around with status cards, I guess, a lot with this. And also, if you then confuse or stun him because it's a status card, you have to place 1 threat in the main scheme. So I like what they're doing with this. I think this is a pretty neat idea. Befitting his tendency to incorporate other mutants' DNA in his own, Mr. Sinister generally amasses new powers over the course of the scenario. With the power of flight, right? So it's an attachment attached to the villain, permanent. Attached to the villain gains aerial, he gets +1 attack, and his attacks gain overkill. He gains increased attack and overkill. With super strength, which is again a setup, attached to the villain, permanent, 1 or more attack. Attached to the villain gains the brute trait and steady. Okay. He gains, and with telepathy, it's also another setup, another permanent attached to the villain. Attached villain gains psionic trait and retaliate. And +1 scheme. He also gains booster scheme and retaliate. The more powers he gains, the more Mr. Sinister's genetic mastery grows and the bigger threat he becomes. So genetic mastery is a treachery card, which is horrible. When revealed, if Mr. Sinister has the following traits: aerial, brute, or psionic, basically take 2 indirect damage for aerial. Brute has exhaust your identity, and psionic has placed 2 threat on the main scheme. Which is kind of cool what they're doing. So I assume there's gonna be cards that let you work around permanents, right? Because these are all permanents right now, so technically you can't take them off in any way. I assume there's gonna be something in his kit or something else that's on the main scheme, because I don't think we see that yet. Yeah, we haven't seen the main scheme, so I assume there's gonna be something that lets us get around the permanent. Because if not, like, that makes him super strong and super difficult to beat. Like, I mean, maybe he will be that difficult. I don't really know, but I assume there's gonna be something to get around the permanents. We just don't know what that is yet. So then once you defeat Mr. Sinister, who's not the final boss, which is interesting, the final one will be the cruel clone of Cable, Strife. And Strife is a 1/0 15 life villain, which, you know, when the final boss has 0 attack, it's probably not going to be great for you. So while Strife is attacking you, he gets +X attack, where X is the number of cards of the most common type in your hand. Okay, so we'll talk a bit about that in a little bit. As a powerful psionic, Strife is skilled at turning the hero's strengths against them. Whenever he attacks, he gains a bonus attack equal to the number of the most common type of card in your hand. The type of card refers to whether the card is an ally, an event, a resource, a support, an upgrade, or a player side scheme, which we'll get into player side schemes in a second, because this is kind of cool. So if you have 3 allies and 2 upgrades, he attacks you, but +3. So you kind of need this really diversified hand, which is kind of interesting in a weird way of, like, thinking about, not a weird way to think about deck building, but just something else you have to keep in the forefront, right, of your mind, of like, okay, I have to think about this when I'm deck building and what I'm going to do. Strife's power is already formidable enough on its own, but when Hope winds up in Strife's grasp, right? So it's a side scheme, permanent, hinders 6 with already a 4, so it's 10. Hope Summers can attack only Strife and can thwart only his scheme. Force response: after Strife is defeated or the last threat is removed from the scheme, flip this card and reveal Living Bomb. Place any threat here on Living Bomb with a crisis icon. Oh wait, we haven't got the Living Bomb yet. Okay, so she tries to mimic his powers to escape him and becomes overwhelmed. Strife's uncontrollable power, right, which is the main scheme, 9 threat on it, 0/0, which is really interesting. After resolving step 1 of the villain phase, each player places X threat here, where X is the number of cards of the most common type in their hand. Again, common type. Each player may discard 1 card from their hand before calculating the X value, which could be useful, right? Like that's a fun like little trade-off that they have going on. And it's only a 1-stage quest, right? Because if this stage is completed, they lose the game. Well, it's not guaranteed. Let me rephrase that. It's not guaranteed. But it is a 1-stage loss condition is what I should say. So it's kind of interesting what they're doing there with that. Strife's uncontrollable power proves too much for her, which means you and the other heroes must save Hope from becoming a, there we go, Living Bomb. So it flips over to a side scheme. Victory 1, Strife cannot be defeated. When revealed, advance the main scheme to 2A. This effect cannot be canceled. It comes with just 3 threat on it and a crisis icon, right? Can you stop Strife before he leaves you to your fate? And this is now the second main scheme, right? So Strife gains Stalwart. Each identity gets +2 hand size, which is pretty interesting. Increase the resource cost to play each player card by 1. Can be rough, but giving you +2 I think is actually not terrible. And it goes up by +1 instead of how much of cards that are in your hand, right? And then it's got 8 on it to move on. So that's all the villains in the box, which is pretty interesting. I like that they've given us a lot here. I don't know if they've always done all 5 villains. I feel like they've done like usually 3 or 4, but maybe they've done 5. I don't really remember off the top of my head. But definitely some interesting stuff going on here. It's definitely some pretty cool stuff. I'll be honest, I'm pretty excited for the villain stuff. So all right, let's move on to all the heroes. With such powerful threats and crucial need to protect Hope, you will have to have some skilled heroes to come to your aid. Fortunately, next evolution comes with 2 powerful members of X-Force ready to jump into the fray. Spoiler alert, they are powerful, right? These we're gonna get into Cable in a second. Cable might be S tier right out of the box. Holy cow! All right, so Nathan Summers, 4 recovery, 6 hand size, 12 hit points. Always a good stat line overall. You may include player size schemes from any aspect in your deck. This is huge, and we'll get into that in a little bit. Set up, search your deck and discard pile for a player side scheme and put it into play. And on the hero side, he's a 2/2/2 with 12 life, 5 hand size. After Cable defeats a side scheme, ready him, which is crazy. So really quick note about side schemes is I know a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, like this is crazy. They've actually done this in Lord of the Rings. Here's some of the old ones. And this was done at roughly the halfway point in the game's life cycle. Just fun fact. This was done during the Angmar Awakened cycle. I'm pretty sure it was done during this cycle. Or this was first done in this cycle. I know it was done in this, but I think this is the first one. Which Angmar Awakens is around the halfway point in the game. Not saying that Marvel Champions is at the halfway point of its life cycle. I'm just saying, like, you know, that's all the information about it, right? Right. So the side schemes that they did in Lord of the Rings were pretty cool. Some of them weren't great and super useful, but they were like a neat idea at least. So anyway, it's not the first time they've ever done it, so they've had practice with this. So I know I saw a few people worried like, oh, I hope they like do this right. They have done it before. They know what works and doesn't work, so this isn't like their first time doing it. So I think that's an important note. All right, so the first of these heroes is Nathan Summers, who we just went over, and he's better known as Cable. Even though his body is slowly being ravaged by a deadly technovirus, Cable is an unflinching leader who guides the X-Force on missions to take out threats before they can strike. As his alter ego ability suggests, Cable is about utilizing the new type of player card in his expansion, player side schemes. All right, so player side schemes represent missions that the hero undertake to aid them in defeating the villain. You put them into play by paying their cost, just like you would any other card. There is a limit to how many player side schemes can be played at once. But after that point, they function the same as normal side schemes. These schemes never actively hinder you, but if you manage to clear them, you can net yourself some fantastic rewards. So, for example, there's his personal one, which is a Victory 0, right? So it's a victory card, which is also important that we'll get into a little bit. Characters other than Cable cannot remove threat from this card, which is fine. While Technovirus Purge is in the victory display, so you just have to remove 5 threat from it. Nathan Summers and Cable gain the Psionic trait, which I'm so happy they're doing more with that. We talked a bit about this with Phoenix, that they haven't really done a lot with it. I'm really excited for them to do more. And Cable gets +1/+1/+1. Thwart, attack, and defense. That makes him a 3/3/3 hero, and it's not going to be that hard to remove 5 threat from this side scheme, right? If you go for this right away and you play him Justice, like, you can remove this really fast. Like, this is not going to be that much of a challenge. So, I mean, by second turn, you should be a 3/3/3 hero, which is crazy, right? That's crazy strong, right? And if I can't even get into it, it's gonna be crazy strong. So, you could take a while, or I'm sorry. For example, Cable's signature side scheme Technovirus Purge can take a while to clear. No, it won't. But once it's in the victory display, Cable gains the Psionic trait and gets a permanent buff to all of his basic powers. Player side schemes can appear in all aspects or in aspect cards as well. So they have Call for Backup, which is, again, Victory 0. When defeated, each player may search their deck and discard pile for an ally and put it into play. That's so strong. That's so strong. For a 1 cost and only having to thwart 3 and doing this with Cable is so strong. That's so incredibly strong. Which lets players find an ally and put it into play when defeated. Not the ally, the card, right? Yeah, when the card is defeated. And that almost makes it sound like when the ally is defeated, they get put into play. An established perimeter, which gives each identity a tough status card. Again, 1 cost, thwart 2, which for Cable is not hard. When defeated, give each identity a tough status card. Huge, right? Absolutely huge card. The rest of Cable's kit is no joke either. With Body Slide, 0 cost event, change form. Each other player may change to the form that you are in. Obviously, this is going to be better in multiplayer games. Now, this is still useful as a 0 cost event in solo games, right? Being able to change form is nice because it's just an action, but it does have more use in multiplayer for sure. And with Precognition, which again, 0 cost event, hero action, look at the top X cards of the encounter deck, where X is the number of side schemes in the victory display. You may discard one of those cards, put the rest back in any order. I already love this card because now I can get rid of Shadows of the Past, so I stop drawing it. He can stack the encounter deck in his favor. You notice that with Precognition, many of Cable's abilities scale by the number of side schemes in the victory display. This means events like Mind Scan, which is a 2 cost event, right? The superpower card as well, which is really nice because of, Death Focus. Remove 3 threat from a scheme. 2 for 3 is not great, but remove 1 additional threat from that scheme for each side scheme in the victory display. The sky's the limit, right? With that, like, I mean, I assume if you have for one of each aspect side scheme plus your side scheme, we're looking at 2 for, what is that, 8 threat removal? Okay, that's pretty strong. And Telekinetic Blast is a 3 cost card against superpower. Deals 6 damage, and then again, 1 additional damage for that enemy for each side scheme in the victory display, assuming that each aspect has 1 plus his own. Again, we're looking at 3 for 11. That's crazy. And especially on superpower, where I can use Death Focus. That's crazy strong. Only gets stronger the longer a scenario goes on. But here's the thing, like, I get they're trying to make it seem that the case that it could take a while to clear. Like, again, 5 shouldn't be that hard to clear with him in Justice, right? It really should. And the other ones, I mean, 3, if I do his May one first, that clears in 1 turn. And then Established Perimeter clears the next turn. Like, this should not be that hard for him to do. So yeah, okay, maybe like 4 or 5 rounds it's going to take, or I guess 5 rounds because you can only do 1 each round, I think it said, or makes a comment about. But still, 5th round and I'm swinging for 11, and then I'm thwarting for 8. Like, yeah, I'll take that trade-off every single day. That's huge. Okay. Use Professor to help you search for your player side schemes, and then once you run out of those, give the villain some forced amnesia. All right, we'll do that in a second. So Professor is a support alter ego. Exhaust Professor and choose to either draw 1 card or search your deck and discard pile for a player side scheme and add it to your hand, which is really nice. Forced amnesia is a 1 cost upgrade. After a non-permanent side scheme is defeated, add forced amnesia and that side scheme to the victory display. All right, hold on, let me reread that. After a non-permanent side scheme is defeated, add forced amnesia in that side scheme to the victory display. So again, if we have just another side scheme that's out there, we can now use that in our victory display. Like that could be so strong. That could be so strong. Again, there's no limit to these. Wait, not that one. Where is it? There's no limit to these cards. So now we're looking at 6 cards we could put in there. So this is even better than I thought. It was a 3 for 12 and 2 for 9. That's crazy. That's crazy good. So anyway, to toss one of their side schemes into the victory display for good measure, right? Absolutely crazy, especially because again, these are victory zeros, so that's why we're able to put them in there. I just that's mind-blowingly good in my opinion, but okay. Befitting his position as leader of X-Force, Cable comes with a pre-built leadership deck. You can call on Caliban as a 3-cost, 1 thwart, 2 attack, 3 life ally. After Caliban enters play, discard cards on the top of your deck until an X-Factor, X-Force, or X-Men ally is discarded, right? Add that ally to your hand. Pretty cool. I also like that it's a little bit cheaper of an ally because this is going to help out Cyclops a bit. And just really overall X cards or X-Men cards in general because they were a little expensive so far. To help you find, call on Caliban to help you find Fentomax, right? 4-cost ally, 1 thwart, 1 attack, 3 life. After Fentomax enters play, search your deck and discard pile for Eva and put it into play. Then play Fentomax to summon Eva. 0-cost support. If Fentomax is not in play, you discard Eva. So Eva is kind of cool in the way that Eva works. Exhaust Eva, choose to either remove 1 threat from a scheme, right? It's not thwarting, it's just removing a threat, which is generally strong. Deal 1 damage to an enemy or heal 1 damage from Fentomax, which is really cool. Okay, Cable is all about completing missions. So cards like Mission Planning, which is 2-cost event, play only if there's a side scheme in the victory display, which hopefully you have as Cable. Until the end of the phase, allies you control do not take consequential damage. Okay, that can be really strong. And Uncanny X-Force. 2-cost support. Basically, max 1 team per character. If each of your characters has the X-Force trait, each ally you control gets +1 thwart and takes -1 consequential damage after thwarting a side scheme. Really cool. Really cool, strong card. Can help you ensure that those side schemes get cleared up without any of your allies taking consequential damage. It doesn't need help, but sure, why not? So a lot of people were really hopeful for Deadpool in this box, and Deadpool never made sense in this box, but I guess he will be here as an ally, and he is grossly strong. He's so good. 3-cost, 2 thwart, 2 attack, 3 life. When Deadpool would be defeated by consequential damage, this is a forced interrupt, so you have to do it. Heal 3 damage from him instead, and add 1 acceleration token to the main scheme. Now, this is pretty easy workaround, right? Just use him as a blocker, right? Do 2 rounds where he takes consequential damage, and then use him as a blocker. Problem solved. Like a 3-2-2-3 stat line is really good. This is a really good card. It can be a really good card. And then I guess you can, if threat is maintained pretty well, and then just you want to keep him out there, right, for a little bit longer. I guess you can, right? I mean, it's a strong basic card. I think this is going to be a card in a lot of decks moving forward. All right, so now we have Domino. So Domino is pretty interesting the way that she works. So Nina is a 3 recovery, 9 hit points, 6 hand size. Choose a card in your hand, swap that card with the top card of your discard pile as an action. Not bad, right? That's pretty cool. As long as the top card is something that's decent. So also known as Domino, 1, 2, 3 stat line. When counting resources on cards discarded from the top of your deck, count each printed wild resource icon twice. Right, this is gonna be kind of huge. Action: you can choose a card in your hand, swap that card with the top card of your deck. So it's a little bit of luck based, but that's kind of like her whole thing is. Well, the thing is she's lucky, not that she does luck based things, but whatever. All right, so we'll have to keep this in mind, right? When counting resources on cards discarded from the top of your deck, count each wild resource printed twice, right? To keep that in mind. So with her powers to manipulate chance in her favor, Domino can swap a card from her hand to the top card of her deck once per round. Again, it'd be nice if you could look at it first, but whatever. This is already handy enough since you might wind up with the exact card you needed, but there's another use for this trick. Many of Domino's signature cards, such as Diamondback, right? It's 2-cost ally, 1/1/2. Exhaust Diamondback, deal 1 damage to her. Discard the top card of your deck, deal 1 damage to the enemy for each resource icon discard this way. This is a wild resource card, just to keep note. A good workout, 2-cost event. It's an attack superpower again, so you can use Death Focus. wild resource card. Deal 4 damage to an enemy. Discard the top card of your deck. For each resource icon discard this way, deal 1 additional damage. We'll see that this could become a 2/7 card. We'll see that in a little bit. And Luck Be a Lady. So 1 cost event, again, superpower. Discard the top card of your deck and count the resources on it. For each resource counted this way, if it is a lightning, heal 2 damage from a character. Science, remove 2 threat from a scheme. Fist, deal 3 damage to an enemy. Wild, your choice. Also a wild resource card. Cause her to discard from the top of her deck with her gaining different or scaling effects depending on how many resource icons are discarded this way. Cool. If you use, and then again, keep note right here, right? When counting resources on cards discarded from the top of your deck, count each printed wild resource twice. Right? We have to keep that in mind. So with cards like a good workout, for each resource icon discarded this way, deal this. So this should stack from my understanding, right? This should be a wild and you would count it twice from my understanding. If you use Domino's ability to swap card from your hand with the top of the deck, you know exactly what resource will be on that card. And the best part, the other ability on Domino's Hero lets you count the wild resource twice. There we go. I was like, I know this is a thing, but I can't remember if it was, mentioned or not. But yeah, so all the wild resources get counted twice, which makes, like, again, oops, not that one. Luck Be a Lady, right? Choose one of the above. You can choose one of the above twice, which is really, really cool. So they note that, fun fact, 14 out of 15 Domino's signature cards have wild resources, which is massive, right? Massively huge, which is awesome. All right, so you can use Domino's pistols to pepper an enemy with pot shots, which is a 2-cost upgrade, restricted. Exhaust Domino's pistol, choose an enemy and discard the top card of your deck. Deal 1 damage to the enemy for each resource icon discarded this way. This attack gains ranged, which is pretty nice. Take advantage of your probability field, which is a 2-cost upgrade. When you use a basic power, discard the top card of your deck. You get +1 to that power for this use for each resource icon discarded this way. Kind of huge, right? That makes her... Wait, let's think about this for a second. When you use a basic power, it's like attack. She's a 2-attack card. Discard the top card of your deck. You get +1 to that power for this use for each resource icon discarded this way. And if it's a wild, it counts twice, right? So that she can now attack 4 or thwart like 3, right? Which is kind of crazy. And then call on Pip the Pug, which is support. Alter ego action, exhaust Pip the Pug. Put 1 domino or a posse card from your discard pile on top of your deck, right? So you know what's going on. If you ever discard something that you end up needing. Now, most people would expect to hit the jackpot, which is a cruiser card, right? This is the only one, I think, that might not have a wild resource because they say 14 and 15 have wild resources. So I assume there's only one jackpot card. But after this card is discarded from the top of your deck, shuffle it back into your deck, which is crazy. If you ever discard something you need, most people would expect to hit the jackpot only once in their lives, but domino being domino, you can turn up lucky again and again, which is crazy, right? That's crazy. Anyway, and then plus that card will allow you to use for each resource icon, right? So deal 1 additional damage. So there's 3 resources on it, so 2 for 7, and then after you discard it, it would go back to your deck. This card, it would do each one of these things, right? I mean, it's just, there's a lot of cool things that card can do. And her kit can do. I mean, it's a really, really interesting kit. All right, so then they get into her Justice cards, right? Because she's pre-built Justice. Wolfsbane is a 3/2/1/3. After Wolfsbane thwarts, name a card type, then discard the top card of your deck. If that card type matches, you may add it to your hand. Can be good, especially if you know what's going on or what's expected to happen. So it gets you to grab extra cards. That's fine. Allows you to pay for team investigation. Now, this is a weird card. It's an alliance card, so people can play for it, but it is a 2-cost per player. I think this is the first time we're seeing this. And remove 3 threat from a side scheme per player. On solo, this isn't going to be worth it. On 4-player game, that would be 8 for 12, right? Which is like, I guess it's good if you need like one huge thwart. Like there's maybe some interesting things you could be here. So I think this card scales a lot better up to 4, but it's still not like amazing. Like 8 cost is a lot, right? That's a lot, even with an alliance. Like that's a lot going on there. that like wipes out 2 players' hands basically. So it's a little bit rough. I don't know how well it's actually going to work, but we'll see. Use the big burst threat removal from that to finish off. Take out the guards. Sorry. Again, it's 0 cost. Justice card. When defeat, each player may discard 1 non-elite minion from play. This could get dirty. This can get crazy good, especially in the Cables deck. And wipe out some minions. Then thwart 2 schemes at once with Overwatch. We've already seen Overwatch before, right, in the Spider-Man cards, but it's the same exact thing, right? Remove equal amounts. Can be huge to keep momentum going. Then once the villain schemes, and I guess that's the thing too. I guess if you put Overwatch with a team investigation and you do 8 on one, or I'm sorry, 12 on one and 12 on another, like that could be really huge. Not thinking this out a little bit, or even on 3-player, being able to do 4, 8, 12, or I'm sorry, it'd be 4-player would be 16. Sorry, I've been doing that math wrong. I can't math. 8 for 16, right? 4, 8. No, I was right the first time. 4, 8, 12. So this would be on a 3-player game, 3, 6, 9. There we go. So being able to do 9 on one and 9 on the other, like, isn't bad, right? That's definitely not bad. That's why I think that's going to be more of a multiplayer card. But we'll see. So you can call members of your posse, including Outlaw, which, again, is a... We have 2 allies for her, right? Because we have Diamondback, which is your first card. And then we're going to have Outlaw, which is going to be a second ally card, which is kind of interesting that they're doing at least 2. So a 3 cost, 1/1/3 toughness comes in. Fantastic. When Outlaw attacks, discard the top card of your deck. Outlaw gets +1 attack for each resource icon discard this way. Phenomenal. Then you have White Fox, which is a basic card, right? 3 cost, 1/1/3. After White Fox is discarded from the top of your deck, put her into play under your control. That can get crazy. I mean, this is almost guaranteed automatic add-in onto her decks for sure. I mean, it's so good. And Domino herself. I'm sorry, including Outlaw, White Fox, and Domino herself, and show the villain that the posse isn't to be trifled with. So it's a 2-cost event, max 1 per deck. Play only if you control at least 3 of the posse trait. Hero action: heal 1 damage from each posse character and ready them, which can be good. On solos, it's going to be a little tough to get in because now we're taking up a lot of ally spots with this and not having to use any blockers. But if you can get to work, it's definitely strong. So, all right, that's all the cards that they're going to work with. And then the last thing is the X-Force inbound, and they give us a hint about what is coming next. And I think we're going to talk a bit about this tomorrow in a Reddit reply because there's some interesting thoughts out there about this that I think are worth mentioning. All right, so I know this was a bit of a longer video. We usually don't go through this in as much detail as we have before, but I think there's a lot to unpack here. I think this was a really great release that they gave us. I think this was pretty cool. I think it's pretty exciting. I'm really hyped for this. I mean, the scenarios look really cool, but man, the heroes, they look phenomenal. Cable and Domino look great. I'm really excited. I think Cable is gonna be S tier right out of the gate, assuming he works the way that we think he's going to. Domino, I think, will be A tier. I mean, she just looks phenomenal. Just everything looks so good. So I'm really excited for it. I'm really excited for everything here. I think it's going to be good stuff. And I'm excited to see what they give us moving forward. I'm really excited about the design space they've entered. I think player side schemes was an inevitable thing. I'm pretty sure we've talked about it in the past on one of my videos, but it was an inevitable thing. And I'm excited that they're doing it. I really am. I'm really excited. So this is a lot of fun. I'm really excited. And let me know down in the comments, right? Let me know down in the comments how excited are you? Is this everything you thought it would be? Is there anything that you were hoping that they would have done that they didn't do or anything like that? And yeah, I'll see you all next time.